Another awesome week of sports is behind us now, and we're going to be bringing you all the latest news and information to know ahead of some really big games, both in the NFL, the NBA, and in college, both football and basketball. We're going to go over it all right now with the help of our News 8 sports correspondents, Dean Holzwarth and Andy McDonald. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for stopping by once again. And we want to begin, of course, talking about the Detroit Lions. They lost to the Minnesota Vikings 27-24 on Sunday, and despite that close score, I mean, there were a lot of issues for the Lions on that game. And the score, I don't think, really reflects just what seemed like an outmatched game for Detroit. Coming off a bye was a little surprising on that end. I mean, what really went wrong in your guys' mind for Detroit on Sunday?
I mean, for me, it was obviously numerous things, right? I've said this last few days here. I think you can say all you want about how our teams are rested coming off a bye week, but look what happened in the playoffs. And I know they were banged up defensively, but I don't know. There's something about that bye week. You're playing so well, then you hit that little stretch where you don't have any games and obviously not as many practices. And then you go into the next game and you just come out a little bit flat, and a little bit undisciplined. And most penalties of the whole season, a blocked field goal, offensive line play was not good. Minnesota did a great job pressuring Jared Goff, 5 sacks. So it was a number of things. When you see Jahmyr Gibbs only rushed for 43 yards or whatever he did, there's issues obviously on the offensive line. So and then there was injuries. So I think it was a combination of lots of different things. And Minnesota played well. They came in wanting to kind of get revenge, I think, from last year's NFC North kind of championship game, and they actually played very well. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, those Minnesota Vikings guys.
Gosh,
I knew he was going to bring this up.
No. I still don't have any faith. I mean, JJ played well. I do think he played well. I saw the stuff with the post. I'm sure you guys have too about the kneecaps. I kind of think that's crazy that people are getting that mad about that. But anyway, I'll say this. I was at that game. And I covered it for us, and it was easily out of the last 3-4 years that I've been going to games now and covering since they've kind of started to turn the corner and become a team that's expected to be good every year. That is either the most lifeless that crowd has been. It kind of just throughout was they were just growing so tired with every single possession. There was something else that was going to go wrong, or they're just going to go 3 and out. I mean, Jared Goff getting hit that much is just kind of unheard of in a game because of the way that their line has been. And it was just happening over and over again. And Brian Flores has had a lot of success, even though Jared Goff has won a lot of those games. The Lions have won a lot of those games. It seems to be because of their defense more of the time against the Vikings. And Brian Flores knows how to draw up the blitzes against Jared Goff, and he did it again against an even weaker offensive line. It just kept happening time and time again where he'd take a snap. You're just that first possession for the Lions, they drive right down the field and they look great, and you kind of just kept waiting for that to come back the whole game, and it just didn't. And it was a tough watch for them for sure, and it definitely changes how you feel. It's again, I think we may have talked about it before, but I've definitely been mentioning it. The parity in this league is just it's crazy right now. It's really just not a team that runs away with it. When you kind of feel like the Lions are maybe going to be that team, all of a sudden there's a world where I'm not going to say that I'm not going to freak out and say they're going to miss the playoffs or anything like that. I don't believe that, but there is definitely a possibility where I think with all the injuries they have building up and them doing absolutely nothing yesterday at the deadline, where the wheels could really fall off this thing if they're not careful. That's for sure. Yeah. So it's crazy how quickly it can change. But when you lose a game like that at home to the Vikings with the schedule the Lions have coming up, obviously Commanders game looks a little easier than it did before. But it's kind of crazy that that's even something that would come out of my mouth right now, I guess.
Yeah, we'll get it to the trade deadline in a second, but really quickly want to just kind of gauge your guys' panic meter. Andy, you said you're not really too worried about it, but Jared Goff said after the game that obviously there's a lot to clean up, but that he also doesn't think that it's time to panic. Do you guys kind of agree with him? Maybe you're a little bit panicked, a little bit?
This, first off, being in that room, that was the most uncomfortable also I've ever had Dan Campbell and Jared Goff be. I mean, they were you could tell emotionally they were both spent after that game. They were just not happy with that. I don't think they expected that coming out of the bye with the way they've been playing. And again, they probably looked ahead at their schedule and they know they got some really tough games coming up. So dropping one at home to a divisional opponent, that's not something the Lions have done a lot in the past. They've already got a couple losses to them this year, but not to the Vikings, but to the Green Bay now once and Minnesota once. It definitely affected them, and they were definitely hurt after the game. I mean, Dan was just kind of straight about it, though, just saying the communication issues. There was just a lot of problems there. But, yeah, the panic meter, I mean, it's not – I'm not going to say that they're not going to make the playoffs. I think that this team – I still am going to believe in the coaching staff of this team, and I'm going to believe in Calvin Shepard and Dan Campbell. John Morton's got to get a little more creative. I kept saying throughout that game to our sports anchor Laney, the whole time we were up there, I was kind of just like, it just feels like there's not really any creativeness today. It didn't feel like their offense. So I think they got to look at that a little bit more too, to get the running game going a bit more, especially now with offensive linemen that they're probably going to have out. Obviously, Sewell maybe hurt for a little bit of time as possible. Taylor Decker didn't look like he was healthy that entire game. He probably shouldn't play. The Mahogany news, it was one thing after the other. I mean, even Ratledge. So, and then they didn't do anything at the deadline yesterday. It's kind of crazy because a week ago we were talking about how maybe it was going to have to be the secondary.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you get 3 injuries in the offensive line. It's like you would think they would try to get them some kind of help, and to see the trade that the Chargers got, only giving up the 6th-round pick to get that offensive lineman, that guard, I just feel like the Lions could have done something like that, and maybe they believe in their guys, their second guys, to be just as good. But that's kind of the biggest problem for me. That's where my panic meter comes from, I guess, is just because they're injured. If they get healthy and they have guys for the rest of the year, I think they're going to at least make the playoffs and be competitive and be a Super Bowl contender. But if they don't get healthy, they got a lot of problems right now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. A healthy Lions team obviously is a very good Lions team, right? And when, like you said, when you have these different injuries that occur, that can kind of knock them off kilter a little bit. So I'm gonna quote Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes and be like, we're good. Right, like that's all they kind of keep saying when we talk about the injuries. Like, hey, we're good, we're going to be fine. So, I'm going to kind of go with them. I have trust in Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes to obviously be able to do the things. And if they're going to stand pat at the deadline, obviously, like Andy said, there's a reason behind that. They trust the guys who are going to come up and replace those. And we've seen the secondary guys. The guys in the secondary step up a couple weeks or before the bye, so hopefully these offensive linemen can do the same. Go ahead.
I think this time, though, there's a little bit more pressure on it. Just because you look at the Eagles, like, I don't know if you guys saw what their GM came out and said, talking about the whole thing of you got to take some risks to win. Well, they've won a couple Super Bowls in that time, and right now, as much as we like Brad Holmes and what he's done in the draft, that hasn't happened yet. So eventually, it's going to have to happen, injuries or not. It doesn't matter. You have to get the job done. And I just feel like yesterday, he hasn't really proved at the deadline. Zadarius Smith is the one move that I guess he made, which kind of kept the fans happy last year.
Which he had to, though, with Hutch going down.
Exactly, had to do that. I feel like with what happened with the offensive line this past week, and you're trying to stay competitive against some of the teams they're playing and some of the fronts they're going to play in the playoffs, I think they need to add more depth there, because it's hard. Like, if Decker keeps playing like that, it's hard to imagine he'll ever be healthy again this year. And then you're one more injury away from really having a problem to an offensive line that's already had a lot of problems this year. So I just think that was kind of the one thing for me right now, is like, I think they needed to make adds before that deadline, just depth pieces. Nothing crazy, just something to make yourself feel a little more comfortable with guys that have played enough. And I don't know, that might hurt them down the line if they get into the playoffs and they're a little banged up still. That's for sure.
They got someone from the Patriots practice squad. Come on.
Yeah, right, exactly. They're all good. That'll do it. I mean, that's like what it is, though. I think that's the frustration I think you're hearing from the fans right now, is that it seems like, as much as we like our own guys, and they've spent plenty of money, you can't blame it on the money. It's not like it's that. Sometimes I think he's a little bit too in love with that philosophy, and if it works out, great. It'll shut guys like me up. But I'm just saying, in the future, it's like when they get to that point, if they end up losing the playoffs again in round 1 or 2, everybody's going to come back to this and say they should have added somebody, and eventually that's going to bite them at some point if they don't do bigger moves, I guess, because it just seems like that's how you get over the hump and win that game, right? I don't know. So yeah, it's it. I'm not going to doubt them. It's still early in the season. They have a lot of time to change things, and a lot of things happen in a long year. But I definitely think it's something to look at. Like, this is a moment in the season where if they don't, this Commanders game, they're going in banged up, and if they don't pull this win out with Marcus Mariota and all the injuries they have going on over there, then you're really
would cause me for concern.
Yeah, then it's really
then the panic meter comes in.
And they lose back-to-back games for the first time since 2022. Then yes, you'll hear me next week saying, "Hey."
And I'm telling you, it's weird. Like, we think back to the Tiger season, right? With I think some of those guys in that locker room wanted moves at the deadline. I don't think anybody in the Lions locker room would say it out loud, but I'm sure some of those guys are thinking to themselves right now, we didn't do anything yesterday. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things that they start losing. It feels that they might look back at that a little bit. I don't know.
Well, and you touched on it. I think that was like my big issue with it. It wasn't the fact that they didn't make any moves. It's that you saw a bunch of other competitive teams and some of the top teams in the league making moves. I mean, the Colts getting Sauce Gardner, huge for them. Even with the Eagles, you mentioned they got Jalen Phillips from the Dolphins. He's a stud defensive lineman. So again, there are teams that are competitive right now that are still trying to take that next step by making moves at the deadline, and just seeing the Lions not do anything. I mean, again, that's where the disheartening part.
I wanted to ask you guys about this today. So I went back and looked just at all of our Detroit teams, the 4 that are in the city. When do you think the last big ad a Detroit team made at the deadline was? Like, could you think of it? Like, who the who the player would be.
Prince Fielder.
It's close to that era for sure. It was. I would say David Price in 2014 was probably the biggest, or 2012 was probably the biggest ad that the Tigers had, like at a deadline. I can't think of any other move that anybody's made. Now, obviously,
for me, Rasheed Wallace from back in the day.
Yeah, right.
Well, there's mine.
I'm just saying, like a big ad, like when the Tigers got David Price, it was like, oh gosh, like they're going for the World Series, like they might win this thing. And obviously our teams weren't competitive for 7 to 8 years, but it's like there hasn't been any big moves, and this is the kind of team where you're like, you'd think they'd make that big ad. I really didn't want Sauce Gardner for what they had to give up. I wasn't asking for anything like that, but I think it's kind of crazy to think about that. David Price is probably the last person that I could think of that was a big name. They got traded at a trade deadline to Detroit.
Right. Well, again, it all is going to depend on what happens, I guess, this next Sunday as the Lions take on the Washington Commanders. Again, Commanders super banged up as well. They're going to be without Jaden Daniels. He was kind of a huge part as to why Commanders were able to upset Detroit last year in the playoffs. Going into this, maybe a little bit of a revenge game. It is on the road. What do you want to see out of Detroit to at least maybe quell some of the concerns that fans maybe have right now?
I mean, improved, obviously, offensive line play, right? Let's get a little more creative with the offense. It was, like Andy says, just kind of stale, and we have to run the ball. That's your bread and butter right now is running the ball with Montgomery and Gibbs and getting Gibbs more involved in the offense. And, I don't know, Goff just looked kind of lost for like Andy said, the first time in a long time, he just looked kind of lost out there. And, to me, he understands when blitz is there. He does a great job of reading defenses, and that just was not the game. So I just think improved overall. Lions, as they've shown since 2022, they've shown their knack for bouncing back every single game after a loss. And so, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, for me, it's the coaching staff, and especially you keep the magnifying glass in the offense. It's John Morton needs to be a little bit more creative. Like I said, I think the biggest difference here is you're going to go into this game banged up. You didn't get any help, so now you got what you got. What's the answer to that? I think you could look at the Bengals with Joe Flacco. They have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, but Joe Flacco's throwing for all these yards just because he gets the ball and throws it right away. I think they have to do the same kind of thing with Jared Goff, and he's going to pass right now more creative with not necessarily screen passes, but slants and routes like that. Like Amon-Ra can get open better than most in the league. I think you got to get him doing some more of that kind of stuff where it's quick hitters and everything like that. So I think that's going to be the best thing they can do right now because, again, they're pretty hurt, and this is the kind of game where you just want to get the vibes going in the right direction because in the NFL, anybody can win any week no matter who's out there. I think you just need to make sure this doesn't keep rolling downhill, and I think that's the easiest way that they could do it is if they get some help on offense, some more creative play calling.
Yep, time will tell. Again, we'll have all the latest from that Lions game later on this Sunday. Let's stick to football now, and again, another kind of big injury news to get to now out of the University of Michigan. It is now reported and confirmed that running back Justice Haynes will be missing some period of time as he is undergoing foot surgery for an injury that he sustained earlier on in the season. Obviously, he missed the game against Purdue last weekend, and Jordan Marshall had a great game, but again, it was a lot closer than maybe Wolverines fans maybe wanted. I mean, how big of a loss is this with Justice Haynes being out? And again, no timetable for his return. They're saying he may be back by the end of the year, but who knows? I mean, that might not even be until after the Ohio State game. So again, just a huge hole right now. How big of a loss is it for the Wolverines?
Yeah, it's one of those things that sounds like unless they were really, really, if they get to that Ohio State game undefeated and he has any chance to play, I'd imagine he would try to get out there. But again, if they aren't competitive at that point, then maybe it would make a difference. But if I was Michigan, I'd plan on probably not having him for the rest of the year. I mean, the word surgery this late in the season doesn't sound great to me. So yeah, that's huge. Jordan Marshall has a lot on his shoulders, but I mean, and he's done a good job when he's had the chance to do it. But again, Justice Haynes was special, man. I think he might have been the best running back in the country, if not close to it.
Yep.
Especially with how little Michigan's passing game has been able to produce. He was still able to run like that. I don't think Michigan's offensive line is one of the better ones they've had in recent memory either. It's definitely done better than what most people thought with how well they've been able to run. But I think Justice Haynes was a big part of that, and obviously Jordan Marshall was kind of the other punch. But yeah, they're going to lean in their running game no matter what. Michigan always has good running backs no matter who it is. So I'm not super worried about the running game not working, but at the end of the day, that is a huge loss. I mean, he was a special talent. The breakaway runs he was having every single game, that's not easy to do no matter who you play for. So it's definitely a huge injury. I don't know if it changes the outlook that much either way because it's going to be tough to get by Ohio State regardless.
Yeah, I think it helps, obviously, not having him for the next couple games because the schedule is a little more favoring for Michigan. But yeah, obviously a big loss, having a great season, coming to Michigan from Alabama and just showing what you can do. And like you said, explosive speed, big runs, and it's kind of led that offense this year with Bryce, not underperforming, but just maybe not playing to expectations right now. Disappointing for Michigan, though, as far as, not being able to score in the red zone, not being able to keep, bring distance between other teams. So I think Michigan has a lot of things to fix. Obviously, they have to get fixed by Ohio State. But yeah, obviously a big hole, but I think Jordan Marshall obviously is going to help lead the way. And like you said, the kid from Forest Hills Eastern should step in, and we should be okay next couple games.
Right. I mean, how much pressure though is going to be on Bryce Underwood now, knowing that he doesn't have his star running back again. Again, he still has Jordan Marshall, and he's probably going to be getting a much bigger load. But you have to imagine that Bryce Underwood, I mean, the ball is going to he's going to have to start making plays, whether it's with his legs or with his arm. He's going to have to really start stepping up in his absence.
Yeah. How many games are we in now? Obviously game experience is huge, and he's just going to have to start, like you said, he's going to start delivering. He's going to have to start making those throws. His receivers are going to have to catch those balls, number one. Hasn't always happened. Right. So, yeah, you can do everything right as a quarterback, but, receivers drop balls, then, obviously it's going to not be good for the offense. So, to me, it's just a matter of, I think that Bryce Underwood has handled expectations pretty well. He's a confident young man, but he just has to go out there and produce.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like we can make all the excuses we want. He came this year, paid as much money as he was getting paid, so there's obviously going to be a lot expected. It's crazy to say that about a college athlete, but it's just the truth that it is when you're making that much money. So no matter what, people are going to look at it as all these games that are under 100 yards passing. I mean, I understand the receivers aren't the best talent in the world, but there's just plays in that Purdue game where, again, it's just like he keeps... I haven't seen the progression yet of him making. There's a 3rd and 6 I can think of specifically where he rolled out to his right, and there's 15 yards of green grass in front of him to get the first down, and say he tries to throw it 20 yards downfield, misses his tight end behind him, and he can't catch it. So it's like just those little things that you're waiting to see, like more of the progression. He uses legs maybe a little bit more. I just feel like that would free up so much more for him to be better. And then obviously just the touch passing, I think, is the one thing. Obviously some of the drops, shouldn't happen at this level, but he is throwing some bullets. Those guys 6-7 yards away, I can say from being there a few weeks ago. It was, the whole first half, all those drops were just like that. The second half, he had a way better half, and some of his passes had a lot better touch on it. So I think that's just kind of the difference, not being as excited or jittery out of the gate maybe would help that if he can get some more touch on his passes. But overall, he's a freshman. I think next year if he comes back with Michigan and everything, he'll be a lot better off for it either way. So, and I want to make sure that I give a name drop to the Forest Hills Eastern running back on Michigan's team. It's Bryson Kuzdal, and he had a couple of good runs last week. So hopefully he's able to keep that going. He's going to get more opportunities now that Justice Haynes is out. So
again, all right. Well, Michigan's on that bye week, but again, they have a pretty big game against Northwestern. After that bye week, they'll be playing at Wrigley Field in Chicago, which is always a really cool opportunity for all those players. Well, let's shift from the gridiron now and move on over to the hardwood, because we've got some college basketball coming up now, both with the University of Michigan and Michigan State. They are both ranked in the top 25 to start the year, and they both had very big wins in that first game, both winning by double digits. Obviously, a lot of downtime since the last time these teams took the floor, but again, really great to see them again kind of assert their dominance to start off the year, and again kind of reassert themselves as top 25 teams. Who, if there was a player, or maybe which one of the two teams kind of impressed you the most during those first games?
Yeah, Michigan definitely impressed me. I actually watched that first half, and they scored a program record 69 points in the first half, and I just couldn't believe the continuity and the chemistry that the guys had, just from the first half of that game. The 4 transfers obviously are going to play a large part, but like that backcourt is going to be so good. Combined with the front court, Elliot Godot kind of running the offense. I think he had like 10 or 11 assists, but like Michigan impressed me. Like I think they're going to be a very, very good team. Dusty May has done a great job at Michigan, especially in the transfer portal. And it looks like he, hit a big winner with these 4 guys too.
Yeah, you watched that game, and I mean, obviously they're playing against Oakland. That was a team that made a run in the NCAA tournament a couple years ago, but I'm not going to act like it's not a game that Michigan should win. But you just look at like the talent on the floor in that game. That was the most impressive I think I've had. Like just from a talent standpoint, like even going back to like the John Beilein days, like that team looks like it could really, really go off. Like it's just like when Michigan on the John Beilein storyline teams. It was never like the 5-star huge guys like coming in. It was kind of teams that got better as they played together more. It feels like this team could just be, good. I mean, right away, they obviously the 69 points in the first half being a record, that was impressive. Then the second half, they didn't exactly take their foot off the gas with getting 121. So yeah, it was overall impressive. Obviously, Trey McKinney, he was Mr. Basketball in the state. He had a great first game as Michigan off the bench, scoring 21. And Morez Johnson Jr. obviously leading with 24 points. They're already in Landenborg too. I think he had like 12 points or something like that.
His hand was jacked up too.
Yeah, so I mean,
His hand messed up.
It's just nuts to see like them all play together. And again, there's that length on the floor. I was just so impressed with how many long wings that Michigan's able to have on the floor at the same time inside to guard. It was a lot to watch. But yeah, I don't think you can argue that it was Michigan that looked more impressive. Michigan State, obviously, if you watch Tom Izzo's interview after the game, saying that they're going to get basically destroyed if they don't figure it out. That says all you really need to know right there. I think Michigan was the more impressive of the two teams.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Michigan State for a little bit because they have quite the month left for them. I mean, what a way to start off the year for them. I mean, obviously the game against Colgate, but now they play number 14 Arkansas on Saturday. Then a couple days later, they've got number 9 Kentucky, and then a couple games after that, they've got a top 25 North Carolina team. This month, again, just super stacked as far as the schedule goes for the Spartans. But is it a little good to be maybe tested this early, or at least kind of gauge where some of these other blue blood programs are kind of sitting at it to start the year as well? I mean, are you worried about Michigan State with this tough schedule, or do you think it maybe will help them in the end?
I'm not worried about Michigan State necessarily. I mean, Thomas is going to get this team back to the tournament. There's almost no question in my mind about that. And then they still have some guys back in this team you like to see, like Jackson Kohler, Carson Cooper, Cohen Carr. They have players back from those teams that they were able to win with last year. But again, the expectation with last year's team is that they were going to excel and maybe make it to the Final Four for the first time in a while, and they didn't meet that goal again. It just feels like with a lot of these teams with Michigan State, there's not like a lot of growing. Like, I don't really see players getting added that are making them better. I think it's going to be hard in today's basketball for Michigan State to really get past like where they kind of have been the past few years, where it is make the tournament, maybe win a couple games, but they're not going to get to that Final Four. To me, it feels like, Michigan, the other end, is adapting and adding those players and stuff like that. And I get it. Tom Izzo's still able to have success, and last year's proof it because they were great in Big Ten play. But again, when it came down to it, I think if you're a Michigan State basketball fan, your goal is always get to the Final Four because there's the expectations that are set. It's been a while since it really felt like that's actually gonna happen. I think last year was their best chance at it. I don't think this team is as good as last year's team, but if the goal is to make the NCAA tournament, then sure. But I think if you were asked Tom Izzo on any of those Spartans, it isn't. And right now it's hard to see that getting any further with some of the talent to the top of the Big Ten right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's totally Tom Izzo thinks to schedule tough teams early on, right?
Yeah.
You've seen this for years, right? Yeah. And it does make them a little more battle-tested come Big Ten play. So I think it's a good thing for them to be playing some of these teams, because they can, obviously, it's kind of a barometer, right? A measuring stick of where they are and where they have to get to compete for another Big Ten championship. So, like Andy said, that is Spartan Nation, right? There's a tradition. Mm-hmm. There's high expectations every single year, and Izzo's teams have to go out and kind of meet them. And when they don't, I think Izzo obviously shows his emotions very, very well. Not well at times too. But he's going to be a grumpy old man. But that's just the way I perceive Izzo at times. But he does a great job with his kids, and he does get his teams ready for March Madness.
I admire his honesty, though, man. I mean, you don't get a lot of people that come out and just say that to the media that their team just he'll just say it how it is, and I love that about him, to be honest. But yeah, again, Dean, to your point, like with the scheduling teams like Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina this year, it's like every year he's just going to do that. It's like the blue blood matchups just constantly happen when Michigan State's playing against those teams. So there's no doubt they can prove it. Like I think early in the season here we're going to figure out how good they're really going to be because of the teams they're playing against.
Can I throw out a quick pun because I had it in me from last week?
Okay, I'm ready for it.
I thought the Spartans were going to whitewash Colgate.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next week.
You're welcome.
Yep. Yeah, it might get turned off now from a lot of people, but hopefully not. Hopefully not. I promise we have more good stuff left in us. So.
Exactly. Well, real quick, just to kind of focusing on the Big Ten as well. Obviously the Purdue Boilermakers, #1 team in the country. Illinois and Wisconsin also top 25 teams. I mean, the Big Ten, again, just as deep as ever, really. Where do you kind of see Michigan and Michigan State maybe lining up as we get throughout the rest of the year? I mean, where do they kind of fit in the Big Ten kind of race for that title?
I don't think this is such a bad take. I'm going to say right now, Michigan's going to win the Big Ten.
Okay.
All right. I just think, like
write
we
it
talked
down.
about a little bit, write it down. They have enough talent. They have depth. They have athleticism. They have big men. They have good guard play. They have a combination of everything that you need to be a Big Ten championship team and make a deep run in March. So I think State's going to be up there a little bit. They seem to always lose these home games, these Big Ten home games throughout the year. But no, it's going to be a deep Big Ten, but I do think Michigan's going to win.
I think that Illinois is the biggest threat to Michigan, but I need to see more from Michigan. This team is still very new together. I mean, it's really hard to like make a call, in my opinion, to say that. Yeah, and last year Michigan State, like they beat Michigan both times, even though they kind of had an even NCAA tournament. I think everybody would say overall for Michigan that was kind of like the same. It felt like the same year in the end, but those games matter. And Tom Izzo, his guys, they know what that game means. I didn't see that out of Dusty May's guys in either game last year, other than the antics at half court for the senior day stuff for Michigan. So that's a whole different story. But yeah, it's just like there is. I think that hopefully this year we're able to see Dusty May kind of really add in that element of we need to win this game against that team, because I promise you Tom Izzo will come ready for those games. I think that Michigan State does have a chance now. I'm not going to say that they don't, because last year they were there and they were that good. And I think that they could prove a lot of us wrong that maybe are going to take too much out of one game. But yeah, at the end of the day, I would probably take Illinois right now because I like their experience a little bit more. But we'll see what happens in the end. Michigan has so much talent. If they can put it together, it's hard to imagine they couldn't win the whole thing, really. Right. So.
Yeah, still early days in the season. Again, we're just so glad that really all the sports are back in action right now. Every time you turn on the TV, there's something to watch. Always enjoy that time of the year. And again, we're really starting to get in the middle of basketball season. If you would like to know a little bit more about the NBA side of things, well, then be sure to tune in to NB8 right here on woodtv.com or on Wood TV Plus and check out the latest from around the league with myself and AJ Evans. Always a fun time there. We talk a lot about the Pistons. We spent a lot of time talking about Ja Morant this week and the turmoil down in Memphis. So if you want to see me feel really sad about something, be sure to tune in and check that latest one out. But again, we want to thank everybody so much for tuning into this latest edition of Sports Frenzy. Dean and Andy, thank you both so much for stopping by. We'll see you again next week. Perfect.